Oi, it were horrible in church. But we had to go 'cause the vicar came round and he said to Mum, "We don't see you in church." And that were right, 'cause we didn't go. Mum said what it were a high church, and we weren't high church, what didn't make sense. But what it were a high church, I said, and said all churches were high, and pointed as well. And Mum, she just called me stupid and hit me on the head, and that were normal. It were Holy Week, Mum said, and I said why were it holy, and she said it were Easter, what is like Christmas, but without any presents or fun, except we got eggs, 'cause Jesus had eggs and probably chickens as well. We had to wash and wash, but we was never clean enough for Mum, and you had to be scrubbed, and then we had to put on our best clothes, and they were horrible, and even Dad said they were horrible, and we had to put on ties, and Mum put on my tie for me, what I couldn't tie it proper, and she had to put Dad's tie on for him, 'cause he couldn't tie his neither. And I put your tie on you, but you turned blue, and Mum hit me again, it was typical. Granny put on a big hat, and Grandad wore a big tie, what he said were a cravat, what is what posh people wear what come from Nottingham or London. But I said nobody wore a cravat in Brixton, and that were London, and Grandad said Brixton weren't posh, so shut up. And Auntie Myrtle, she put on a big hat as well, what had a feather stuck in it, and I took the feather and tickled the cat, and the cat stuck his claws in my hand, and I bled all over my trousers, and Mum went mad and hit me again. She should be reported. We got to the church and we was late and had to go to the back, and there were a big fat woman sitting in front of me and I couldn't see. So, to make her get out of the way, I stuck her with a pin, and she yelled she'd been bit by a bee, so I stuck her again and she went away holding a bump. Then I could see, and there were a choir, all girls dressed in white, and they were right pretty, and Uncle Ted said he had to get closer, so he went up the front and he got too close and someone called the police and they took him away. Then the vicar came in and he were wearing a skirt, 'cause what Jesus did, Mum said, and there were old men and they were in skirts as well, and I told you they were Scottish, and you said they weren't, and we started to fight, and then there was another man and he had a thing that was smoking and smelly and he waved it around, it were horrid. Granny put it out with her hat and there were a rumpus. Then we had to pray and we got on our knees and I asked what to pray for and Mum said the lottery, but we didn't win, so that didn't work. Then we had to stand up and the vicar he went on, and then we had to sit down, and then we had to kneel and stand and like it were an exercise, and it went on and it were mad and boring as well. You had a tube of paint you had got from school, and when we was praying you squeezed it out on the ground. Then everybody went to the front and lined up, and I said what was it for, and I wanted to go too, but Mum said we couldn't go 'cause we weren't holy, but what they was going to drink wine and eat bread, but Mum said the bread it were really flesh and the wine it were Jesus' blood, and I said that was disgusting. But Dad said he needed wine and it couldn't be worse than the stuff what he made in the attic, so he went to the front, but he trod on the paint and left blue marks as he walked, and other people they trod in the paint as well and it spread. Then they all came back and Auntie Myrtle said what she had seen the Holy Ghost, and you said what you wanted to be a ghostbuster when you grew up, and where was the ghost 'cause you wanted to bust it, and Granny started to cackle. Some posh kid stood up and he read from the Bible and it went on, but he said give to the poor, and Grandad fell asleep and started to snore, and people were looking around and getting right leery because the blue what Dad had spread had got on their feet as well, and then onto their knees when they prayed, and then onto the hymn books, and then everywhere. But then a good thing happened. They gave to the poor. A big silver plate was passed around what had piles of money on it, so we took the money, and when people complained we said we was poor, and what was the problem, 'cause that's what Jesus did. But they threw us out anyway. So we went home, but we forgot Uncle Ted, so we left him behind, and that was the day we went to church.